Hi kiddos, it's Mrs. Silver again with another read aloud. I hope you were able to enjoy your weekend. It was gorgeous outside. And now I hope you're getting into a routine and finding a time each day where you can pull out a book that you love to read or do your homework and your classwork at school. The read aloud I chose today was called A Bad Case of Stripes by David Shannon. I chose it because I asked my daughter, I said, what book should I read to the little kiddos? And she said, oh, remember that book I loved when I was 7? Why don't you read that? So that's why I chose this book, A Bad Case of Stripes. Camila Cream loved lima beans, but she never ate them. All of her friends hated lima beans, and she wanted to fit in. Camila was always worried about what other people thought of her. Today she was fretting even more than usual. It was the first day of school, and she couldn't decide what to wear. There were so many people to impress. She tried on 42 outfits, but none seemed quite right. She put on a pretty red dress and looked in the mirror, and then she screamed, "Ah!" Her mother ran into the room and she screamed too. "Oh, my heavens," she cried. "You're completely covered with stripes." This was certainly true. Camila was striped from head to toe. She looked like a rainbow. Mrs. Cream felt Camila's forehead. "Do you feel all right?" she asked. "I feel fine," Camila answered. "But just look at me." "You can get back in bed this instant," her mother ordered. "You're not going to school today." Camila was relieved. She didn't want to miss the first day of school, but she was afraid of what the other kids would say. And she had no idea what to wear with those crazy stripes. That afternoon, Dr. Bumble came to examine Camila. "Most extraordinary," he exclaimed. "I've never seen anything like it. Are you having any coughing, sneezing, runny nose, aches, pains, chills, hot flashes, dizziness, drowsiness, shortness of breath, or uncontrollable twitching?" "No," Camila told him. "I feel fine." "Well then," Dr. Bumble said, turning to Mrs. Cream, "I don't see any reason why she should go to school tomorrow. Here's some ointment that should help clear up those stripes in a few days. If it doesn't, you know where to reach me." And off he went. The next day was a disaster. Everyone at school laughed at Camila. They called her Camelia Cran and Night of the Living Lollipop. She liked her best to act as if everything were normal, but when the class said the Pledge of Allegiance, her stripes turned red, white, and blue, and she broke out in stars. Here's all our friends in the classroom in disbelief. The other kids thought this was great. One yelled out, "Let's see some purple polka dots." Sure enough, Camila turned all purple polka dotty. Someone else shouted, "Checkerboard!" and a pattern of squares covered her skin. Soon, everyone was calling out different shapes and colors, and poor Camila was changing faster than you could change channels on a TV. That night, Mr. Harms, the school principal, called. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Cream," he said. "I'm going to have to ask you to keep Camila home from school. She's just too much of a distraction, and I've been getting calls from the other parents. They're afraid those stripes may be contagious." Camila was so embarrassed. She couldn't believe that 2 days ago everyone liked her. Now nobody wanted to be in the same room with her. Her father tried to make her feel better. "Is there anything I can get you, sweetheart?" he asked. "No, thank you," sighed Camilla. What she really wanted was a nice plate of lima beans, but she had been laughed at enough for one day. Here's the newscaster. The Creams were swamped with all kinds of remedies from psychologists, allergists, herbalists, nutritionists, psychics, and an old medicine man, a guru, and even a veterinarian. Each so-called cure only added to poor Camilla's strange appearance until it was hard to even recognize her. She sprouted roots and berries and crystals and feathers and a long furry tail, but nothing worked. One day, a woman who called herself an environmental therapist claimed she could cure Camilla. "Close your eyes," she said. "Breathe deeply and become one with your room." "I wish you hadn't said that," Camilla groaned. Slowly, she started to melt into the walls of her room. Her bed became her mouth. Her nose was a dresser, and 2 paintings were her eyes. The therapist screamed and ran from the house. "Ah!" "What are we going to do?" cried Mrs. Cream. "It just keeps getting worse and worse." She began to sob. Here's the other half of Camilla. At that moment, Mr. Cream heard a quiet little knock at the front door. He opened it, and there stood an old woman who was just as plump and sweet as a strawberry. "Excuse me," she said brightly, "but I think I can help." She went into Camilla's room and looked around. "My goodness," she said with a shake of her head. "What have we here is a bad case of stripes. One of the worst I've ever seen." She pulled a container of small green beans from her bag. "Here," she said, "these might do the trick." "Are those magic beans?" asked Mrs. Cream. "Oh my, no," replied the kind old woman. "There's no such thing. These are just plain old lima beans. I'll bet you'd like some, wouldn't you?" she asked Camilla. Camilla wanted a big heaping plateful of lima beans more than anything else, but she was still afraid to admit it. "Yuck," she said. "No one likes lima beans, especially me." "Oh dear," the woman said sadly. "I guess I was wrong about you." She put the beans back in her bag and started towards the door. Camilla watched the old woman walk away. Those beans would taste so good, and being laughed at for eating them was nothing compared to what she's been going through. She finally couldn't stand it. "Wait," she cried. "The truth is I really love lima beans." "I thought so," the old woman said with a smile. She took a handful of beans and popped them into Camilla's mouth. "Mmm," said Camilla. Suddenly, the branches, feathers, and squiggly tails began to disappear. Then the whole room swirled around. When it stopped, there stood Camilla, and everything was back to normal. "I'm cured," she shouted. "Yes," said the old woman. "I knew the real you was in there somewhere." She patted Camilla on the head. Then she went outside and vanished into the crowd. Afterward, Camilla wasn't quite the same. Some of the kids at school said she was weird, but she didn't care a bit. She ate all the lima beans she wanted, and she never had even a touch of stripes again. The end. I hope you enjoyed the book and the read aloud, and you're reading lots of new books at home. I hope to see you all soon, and I miss you so much. Take care.